and 20 game jams later, here's what I've learned. So, actually, because I submitted this talk before the last Ludum Dare, it's 21 game jams now. So my name is Alex Bezuska. I live in Louisville, Kentucky, in the general area, actually in Indiana, but don't tell anybody. And I am a part of the founding members of Louisville Makes Games, which is a community that's kind of like equivalent of like how EKU has the IGDA here, or how RunJumpDev has their game development group in Lexington. So we're just a bunch of people that get together and help each other make games better. And I'm also one half of Two Scoop Games. The other half is back there putting something in his pocket, and he's so we make up Two Scoop Games, and right now I'm freelance doing game dev stuff. I mostly do contract work, and so I make games and apps and stuff like that, and that's what pays the bills, just so you know.
Is it called Two Scoop Games because there's two of you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Eric just came up with the
yes.
Yes, and we like ice cream. So 2 people, ice cream. So Louisville Makes Games. I mentioned it before. Louisville Makes Games is a community that I'm part of. I could see several people that are here. I think that like over a dozen of us drove up here for the conference today. So I'm really proud of our numbers. Louisville taking over. And so if you ever see any events on any calendars or anything, Louisville Makes Games. We do game jams, meetups, stuff like that. Feel free to come to any of them. It's always free and open to the public, and we'd love to have visitors. Two Scoop Games, like I said, is me and Eric, and this is us on the roof of our building in Warp Zone, which we're not supposed to be. And so this is our illegal roof selfie. But the people on the 5th floor let us do it, so it's their fault if we get in trouble. So, like I said, I'm going to have to go through this really quick because I want to get to the actual content. So how did I get into games? So it all started when I was a kid. I used to draw a lot, and my parents would buy these big rolls of butcher paper because they were really inexpensive and roll them out on the kitchen floor, and I would just draw all kinds of stuff, all kinds of characters and animals and all kinds of stuff like that. I continued drawing for a long time, and I still do to this day. Not as much as I'd like to, but yeah. So I had encouraging parents. I also had parents that were also artists. May not have done it for their career at all times. Like sometimes they had to do stuff that actually paid money, which you can probably relate to if you're trying to get into doing games. But yeah, my parents were always doing art. My dad does illustration, my mom does painting, my dad does sculpture, and my dad is a graphic designer. So that kind of stuff was kind of like my environment growing up. When I was really young, I got a Super Nintendo. It was my first video game system. I played some video games before that, but the Super Nintendo was amazing. It was like everything to me, and it kind of kept me from ever going outside again. But it's okay, because there were lots of other things to do inside, like my first computer. I had a ton of fun with my Mac Performa 630 CD. It was the first computer that I had, and it was also one of the first computers that had a CD drive where you didn't have to put the CD in a cartridge and then put it in, which I don't know if anybody remembers that. But so it had a 500 megabyte hard drive, which is insane, 13-inch screen, and it weighed a ton. And I was able to do really cool stuff on it, like Photoshop. And so I've used Photoshop since version 3.1, so it's like, I don't know, 20-something years of Photoshop that I've been doing now. So I learned a lot from doing and playing around with the programs that my dad used for work. And then when I got into the end of middle school and the beginning of high school, I got a program called Flash, which at the time was made by Macromedia. And that program was amazing for me because I could do animation with it. And so I would draw things and animate them both in Flash. And throughout this whole time, I was playing video games and drawing things and animating things, and I was always thinking like this is somewhere along the lines of what the people that are making these games are doing. Like maybe I could do that as a career, and I always wanted to do that. So I decided that I wanted to go to art school. There was a school called Art Institute. It was like $90,000 to go to it, and I couldn't afford to go to it, and I didn't have good enough grades to go to it, so didn't end up going. But I did get a glimpse of like AAA games because I went and took a campus tour and saw the game design program there, and also the most importantly to me, the 3D animation program there, which was taught by instructors who actually worked in games, and I also had an instructor I was really excited about to work for Pixar. And so that was my dream, but it didn't happen. So I, over time, taught myself web design, graphic design, that kind of stuff, and started doing that as my job. So I didn't completely go to school, just kind of self-taught this whole way. So then I'm living my life and doing web design things, and then all of a sudden on Netflix one night when I'm chilling out, this was in 2012, I see this movie, Indie Game the Movie, and I'm like, what is this? I got a little late to the party with this movie, but when I first saw it, it was mind-blowing. It was like incredible that these small teams of 1 or 2 people were actually making games and actually like successful making games, and you didn't have to be part of this huge team to create stuff. But turns out that this fantasy world that I just discovered was just that, a fantasy world, because the developers in this movie are the kind of like the 1% or less of actual indie developers, and it's actually really unrealistic to assume that you're going to have results like Indie Game the Movie if you're not going to be the next Ed McMillan or anybody in that movie. It's probably not going to happen. But it did give me a huge motivation and confidence boost that carried me into making games, and then eventually I met Eric at a meetup, and he was working on this little game that, oh shoot, I had a picture of it, but I didn't put it in here. It was like a rooftop running game that he was making to help his brother learn to program. And I said, hey, I've been trying to work on some games myself. Maybe I can make some art for this. And then we started making games. And then I found out about game jams. I did my first game jam. I actually finished a game during that first game jam. And I made some friends, many people in this room. And 4 years later, I'm still making games. And someone let me talk at a conference. So that was pretty cool, and that's today. So thanks, Vector. So wait a second. Game jam. What's a game jam? So if you're not familiar with game jams, they are sometimes in person, sometimes online events. You get to work in teams. Sometimes you work solo. Seems like there are a lot of ways to do a game jam, right? But basically, you're going to create a video game based on a theme. Everybody gets the same theme usually. And there's a time limit. So usually these game jams take place on weekends. You start on a Friday, and on a Sunday you have 48 hours to complete a game based on a theme, work on a team, and the most important part, submit what you made, because it's really good for just that feeling of closure and that feeling of like, I did something and I got something done. Even if it's not working or even if it's not completely polished, many game jams also have like some rules where they let you submit and then make some tweaks later to fix bugs that were preventing people from playing the game. So how did I find out about game jams? So I started following some indie developers on Twitter, and I stumbled upon this Global Game Jam 2013 keynote. This was in 2014 or actually late 2013 when I found this. And it was by Aaron Robinson, who did a game called Gravity Ghost, or was working on a game called Gravity Ghost at the time. Here's a little clip.
Maybe you work somewhere where you don't get to make a lot of decisions. Or maybe you work in AAA games where you dream up new ways for a guy who looks like this to meet his untimely end. And maybe it's like a cartoony game, or maybe it's like a serious type game, or maybe it's what they're calling irreverent, but maybe you started to wonder if there's more to making video games than shooting fools in the face. But no matter what your plan is, a game jam is pretty much a no-fail situation if you think about it. Worst case scenario, you spent a weekend finding out that your idea doesn't work, and it's time to try something new. You've still learned something valuable, and it might save you a lot of time in the long run. Medium case scenario, you've leveled up your game making skills for sure, and probably have a rad new prototype to play with. And the best case scenario is, I don't know, something good.
She explained it in a way where I felt not so afraid to dive into doing something in a weekend, using my time in that weekend and actually building something and meeting new people and all kinds of things that I wouldn't want to do, but I did. So, and I'm really grateful for people who make these keynotes and explain game jams in a way where people can feel comfortable diving into something that sounds pretty intense. So Global Game Jam 2014, this was my first game jam. So there was no local event in Louisville. I'm not sure if there was one in Lexington, but I don't think that I knew how close Lexington was at the time. And I talked to Eric, and he was interested in doing it. we found out that there was a group of people at the local hackerspace called Level 1 who were called the Level 1 Game Dev Group, and we met up with them, found out that it was basically 2 people, but that's okay. We got at least one person interested in doing the event with us and a space to do it. We got the word out, and then on Jam Day, we formed a team. It was me and Eric working with 2 other people. We finished a game, and it changed my life. Kind of half kidding there, because it really did make a big difference in my confidence and helping me feel like I could actually do something that I had always wanted to do since I was a kid. So from that time on, I kind of marked this as a time when a community was born in our city. The Level 1 Game Dev group plus the new people became a new group called Game Dev Lu, which we later changed the name to Louisville Makes Games. So local community is really big and really important, and especially in the game jam scene, it's very community focused. Louisville Makes Games is the local community in Louisville. You also have an IGDA chapter here at EKU, which I've met some of the people that run that, and it seems like a really great group. RunJumpDev is a local group in Lexington, and there's some really great people that run that, and they help run this conference also. And Big Night is the Bloomington Indie Games night, so if you're in like the Bloomington, Indiana area, check out those guys. So the global community of indie developers is also really, really cool. They hang out a lot on Twitter. Itch is like an indie alternative to Steam that's really popular amongst the indie game scene. They have cool events, like this is actually BitBash in Chicago, which I'd recommend people to check out. It's really fun. They have conferences, so like the one we're at now, but also different conferences that you can go to. And the indie scene is diverse, welcoming, encouraging, and most of the people don't have an ego, so it's really easy to ask questions, learn things, and get feedback, get help. So be that way too, please, if you can. It's a really great community, and it's really different from a lot of other communities that I've been a part of, and let's keep it that way. And you get to meet awesome people, like, he's not here, like Leonard, and if you're nice, you get a hug from Leonard, and that is amazing, believe me. Leonard's giving a talk at 4:30 today. Sorry, J-Kid's not in here, is he? Yeah, Leonard rules, so find him, get to know him, get a hug. Okay, so the first game jam that we did was for Global Game Jam in January 2014. The theme was, this was a really cool theme, it was, we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. And so that's pretty deep philosophical stuff here. So we ended up making a game where you play as 4 different characters in the same apartment, and you start off as a mouse, you're trying to get the cheese, and the cat's kind of antagonizing you a bit, and then you play as the cat, and you're trying to get food from the owner, and then you play as the owner, and then eventually you play as the landlord, and each character sees the world in kind of a different perspective. So the owner cares about the cat, the landlord just sees all kinds of mess all over the place and is always trying to fix things, and it was really fun, and it was like the first time that we actually finished something, which leads me to the first lesson that I've learned, which is finishing a project is huge for motivation. And what that means is, for me, is finishing this game jam made me think, hey, I can actually do this. I can actually like start a project, finish it in a weekend, move on to something else. Like it's a complete game. I can put it up online and people can try it. It might not be big, it might not be the best thing, it might not be something I can make money off of, but at least it proved to me that as part of a team I could accomplish something. So the next game that I'm going to talk about is a game that we made for Flappy Jam, and this was in February 2014. The goal of the jam, or the theme, was to make a hard, almost unplayable game like Flappy Bird. And so I found out about this jam. It was a month-long jam that took place on Itch. This is actually before I even knew what Itch was. And I found out about it like on the last weekend. So the entry, we had to enter like the next day. So me and Eric worked on a game for basically one day. We sat in his apartment and just like worked on this game until we had something that was playable. And the way that we were able to do that is by keeping the scope extremely small. And so the next lesson that we learned is to keep your scope small. It's super important. It's not just important with game jams, but it's also really important with any kind of work that you do, whether it's contract work or making a game that you're going to sell, like having a small scope and being able to accomplish something feels so much better than starting off a huge project and only getting 10% of the way there. Like it's also really huge, and it really helps with motivation to actually see things getting done. And if you have a small list of things, you can get things done quicker, and then you feel good about yourself. So another game that I want to talk about was the game that we did for Ludum Dares 31, which was December 2014, and the theme of the jam was entire game on one screen. And so for this game jam, the theme was like really broad, and we didn't really have that many good ideas. So we started thinking about mechanics and things in games that we liked that felt good. And one of the things that we thought of was the sword slashing in Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. So you can just go up to bushes, enemies, you can slash, you can turn around and slash in any direction. And so we decided to make a game based on that. It was originally going to be like a heavy metal themed game where you have a guitar and it changed completely. But we ended up with you're a chef's hat and you have a rolling pin and you're fighting off all these cookies and cakes that came alive so you can protect the kitchen. And we actually had the ginger boss. It was the first time that we did a boss in a game. We originally wanted to have a weak point and make it really interesting, but again, keeping things in scope, we just made a really strong enemy. But what this game kind of solidified for me, which we'd already done a little bit on Kickbot, is the lesson that designing around a mechanic can really help you figure out more than like trying to figure out something that fits with the theme, trying to find a mechanic that you like, and then trying to make the entire game based around that one thing that feels good. So one thing that me and Eric like to say is like you find the button that feels good, and then you just keep pressing that button, and you just keep like filling your game with that everything that emphasizes that one experience, that one thing that actually feels good to do. So the next game that I'm going to talk about, we made for Global Game Jam 2015, and the theme was, what do we do now? And so for this game, we wanted to make something a little different than stuff that we made before. I have a slide here. Eric described the game as, the day the world changed is a somber reflection on the troubles a new baby can bring to a family and how it can affect the whole community. And so I put a video here where some YouTubers, we handed the game over to some YouTubers and had them try it out. And I'm going to show you.
The folks over at Two Scoops Games, Alex and Eric, they said, Larry, we'd like you to do a raw reaction video. Honey, I've got to tell you something.
I have to tell you something.
It's a little bit of language.
Honey, I have to tell you something. I think I know what this is going to be about.
This is a compilation of 3 different YouTubers.
I'm pregnant.
I'm pregnant.
I knew it.
So what do we do now?
What do we do now?
What do we do now?
All right, Dr. Eyebrows. Oh, dear God. I don't think that one's mine.
What the fuck?
She gave birth to a shark.
Oh, God. Oh, what in the hell? Oh, dear God, what is happening? Am I controlling the murder shark? This is awesome.
What? Ah! I'm sorry. Hello?
He actually apologized.
What even the hell? I just ate myself!
Oh, there's legs. I gotta eat everything.
And then dolphin shark eel. Yum 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 yum. Yum 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 yum. I'm a dolphin eel. Dolphin snake eel. I don't know why I'm here. I was born from a woman who's a human who has sex with a dolphin. This is my life. This is the life of a sea dolphin eel shark. There's nothing more to it. Yum 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 yum. 2 scoops. I don't know. you're good game makers. As we've so clearly seen. Never stop. Never stop making games.
So that was a game that was designed around, like we were struggling to come up with a theme, and then all of a sudden Eric had the idea for basically that entire scenario. And yeah, so yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah, when I played that game, there was a button you could press that would cause you to infinitely
Yeah, so that was a debug thing for us to be able to grow the shark, and we left it in, and it was way too easy to find that button. Yeah, so and it also really crashes your browser tab, because all these games that we've made are up to this point are browser games. So yeah, so the lesson that I learned from that game jam was it's okay, you can make a throwaway game. It doesn't have to be the next game that you're going to publish on platforms. It doesn't have to be something that you're going to continue working on forever. You can just make something in that point in time in that weekend, and that's it. You can just put that out into the world and say, I'm done, I'm going to move on to something else. And the really cool thing is, even though we made this game based on this like kind of throwaway theme that's a one-time joke, this was the first time that we did rotation of sprites in our engine that we were using at the time. This is the first time we did particle effects, and it's the first time that we did screen shake. And so those are all like super valuable techniques, and that pretty much make a game in themselves. So, I mean, yeah, so that was super important. Bonus lesson, share your game with YouTubers, because it's really fun just to see somebody who you don't know trying your game. And it can be really enlightening, because there might be something that people completely don't understand about how to play your game, or they might just have a funny reaction and make videos where they make songs about your murder shark. So yeah, sharing your game with YouTubers was something that I learned early on, and I really enjoy that. And there's some great YouTubers out there. Larry Chupacabra, Jupiter Hadley plays like almost every indie game jam game, and these people really love trying new stuff. So the next game I'm going to talk about was for Ludum Dare 33. This was August 2015, and the theme was You Are the Monster. And so we made this game called Treatment and Control, and this is, this time, legitimately a serious game. This is the first time that we made a serious game. One of the only ones that we've made. We usually make something funny. But this game, I'm going to also show a video of this one, because it kind of clues you in on the reaction that we were trying to get from people. And it also, again, submit your game to YouTubers, tell them about your stuff, and you get some fun reactions. So this is a compilation of 2 different YouTubers playing Treatment and Control and trying to figure out what the story is.
Okay, so I'm a nurse.
This looks like a prison. I'm glad we're safe. I don't think we're safe.
Time for my medicine? Yeah, apparently. People are disappearing and nobody seems to care. Oh, they're turning black and white.
Anthony hasn't showed up in a few days. Dude, the drugs aren't working on him. Oh, that's boring. This job is boring. You don't have a job, you're just sitting there. I have a job.
So apparently I'm like drugging them into submission? I don't think we really need these pills. Are you Eric? Nope, you're Kara. Oh, Kara. Why are you still thinking so much? I feel like something's gonna happen to Kara. Look at, we got a serve poster here. We got trust. So this is some kind of weird facility where, for some reason, we're drugging everyone into submission. Ooh, Kara gets a red pill now.
They're brainwashing them. They're indoctrinating them. They're just forcing them to work.
Kara's missing. Wonder where Kara is. I want to know where Kara, I'm probably saying her name incorrectly.
I don't want to die.
This is just very interesting, because it's like, I feel a little bit conflicted about the fact that I'm apparently drugging these people into submission.
I'm about to pull out the philosophy books and shit, because like, it's to show how we all conform to whatever the society tells us to do.
I'm like giving these people medicine to make them more submissive.
Society told us that to be safe we needed to do whatever they said.
Some crazy dictator government.
So we sat in those desks working because we took pills that would just take away our individuality.
So it was interesting. I love things like this that make you think and make you like kind of do things that you're like, oh, I don't know. I wouldn't do that in real life. It's no.
So we became mindless husks. That's what I'm going with.
So yeah, so basically we made a game about like working a corporate job, you know, normal stuff, 9 to 5. But the lesson that I learned doing that jam is that the story can be a star of the show. So this game is basically just about walking around and talking to different people, and the story is kind of revealed over time. And that was a big thing for me personally, because I really enjoy narrative-based games, and that was the first time that I ever made something like that. So I'm glad that we were able to do that, because like half the jam was we basically only used half the jam because we had some technical difficulties, but it worked out and we had something to show. So the next game that I'm going to talk about, we did for Ludum Dares 34, which was in December 2015, and the theme was growing. And so we made a game called Cluster Junk, The Secret of Trash Island, and our tie-in with the theme was that you are a piece of trash floating in the ocean, and you're trying to gather up more trash and make yourself larger so you can be the biggest trash island in the ocean. And so this is kind of like a 2D Katamari-like game. And it was really fun making this, because a lot of people who enjoy Katamari like told us like, hey, this is like a Katamari in the browser, so it was kind of fun. But the really cool thing about working on the team that we had was it was me and Eric and Kara and Ben Wiley. And Kara and I worked on art, Eric worked on code, Ben Wiley worked on code and also on music. And the thing that set this game off, for me at least, was having a dedicated person working on sound effects and music. And there's some really great music. I played some of it for you on the way in, and I was going to have a video of it, but I don't. But basically the lesson that I learned on this one is having a dedicated audio person can make a huge difference in your game. And so like if you're trying to work on a team, or try to invite people to do music and sound to game jams that you participate in, and try to have if you have like an artist and developer in your team, like try to add somebody to do music and sound, and having them work throughout the whole process of making the game, you can really like influence the decisions that you make in the other parts of the game based on that sound and that audio, and the music in this game was particularly good. And so that was a big lesson. And now when we do games, we try to do that when we can, but usually not as many people that do audio show up at game jams. So try to invite some audio people next time you do a jam. So the next game I'm going to talk about was for Global Game Jam 2017. The theme was waves, and we created a game called Duelastic. The point of the game was it's kind of like air hockey, where you're playing as these two cones. And we tried to do two brand new things for us during this game jam. One of them was doing some fake 3D. We'd only done 2D up until this point, and so I tried to make some like stacks of rings to kind of make like a 3D cone shape. And as you can see, that didn't turn out so well. So the other thing that we tried to do in this game jam was to do network online multiplayer. And so in a game jam, that could be quite an ambitious goal to try to do, but that actually ended up working, which was pretty cool. And we used Eric used this technology in the browser called WebRTC, where you can connect one computer directly to another once they're matched up, and then they're just playing with each other. It actually works pretty well, and so it was fun. There was a pretty big flaw with submitting the game online, because we didn't have like the server and everything set up so that people could actually play it. They had to like download it and set it up themselves, and so we probably have nobody ever played this game other than the people who were at the game jam with us. And we did work on it some more, and we ended up redoing it with WebGL with something called 3JS, and made it look a lot better and more of the goal that I was trying to go for. But this was all post-jam. During the jam it looked like this, and so I was a little disappointed, but we still learned a lot of stuff. And so this was one of the big lessons that was really hard for me to swallow, but sometimes things just don't work out, and sometimes there are game jams where you are going to try really hard to accomplish this really cool idea that you have, and it's just not going to work. And that's okay, because if you look back at the jam and you learn something, did you really fail? I mean, you probably came away with it better off than you were going into it. So sometimes things don't work out. It's just how life goes. It's how game jams go. And we've been more than lucky to have many game jams actually have a playable thing at the end. So that was a big lesson for me. So another game I want to talk about not all the games that I have here are 2-scoop games. This is one that I made just by myself. I made this for Ludum Dares 37, December 2016, and the theme was one room. And so I made a game called Finding Home, and it's a game about this little snail, and you're talking to your mom, and you're trying to figure out why it seems like all the other animals in the forest have this nice home to live in, but you don't seem to have a home like the other ones do. And eventually, through talking to these different creatures, you learn stuff about their homes, and eventually you talk to this turtle who has a shell like you and explains to you that the shell is actually like a great home because you can take it with you anywhere, allows you to travel and explore, and it's like a children's storybook thing, and it was one of my first attempts at writing something, and I did it in rhyme, and I just kind of like put myself out there and made something. So it was kind of about like anxiety and being uneasy about something, and you know, having friends to help you out and back you up, and realizing that what you have isn't so bad after all, and not to, you know, kind of look at what other people have in such a high light. And so the main thing that I took away from this, and the goal that I had going into this, was that I can make a game, you can make a game by yourself. And so my challenge for myself with this game jam was to say, I want to do something completely by myself. This is 2016, this is 4 years into my game dev journey, and I wanted to see if I could start to finish make something just myself. And so I did the art and the code and the story and all that, and I was able to accomplish something, and I felt pretty good about it. And I felt like it was a good way of gauging how far my skills had come, and I kind of needed that at that point in my life. So this lesson, you can make a game by yourself even if you don't do code, even if you don't do art. You can make a game with twine, with ink. You can do a narrative-based game. Just if you take the time, like, you can make a game even by yourself, and you could still submit something to a game jam and feel good about it. So this leads me to the last game that I'm going to talk about, which we made for Ludum Dare 40. This was December 2017. This was just last year. The theme was, the more you have, the worse it is. And this is really cool because I just thought of a way that the theme actually tied in with this game, because we originally were having a lot of trouble coming up with a game for this theme, and I thought of this idea where you're this rock climber on this wall, and you can just drag out multiple arms, like extra arms, like more arms than you would really need, and you could grab onto these different pegs, and you're trying to get to a goal. And then, like, cut the rope, you can slash the arms away, and so the theme was kind of loosely interpreted, like hardly interpreted at all. But when we finished this game jam is when I learned the lesson. We found another person who had participated in the jam who was offering to give out brutally honest advice. So brutally honest, not so much advice, but brutally honest feedback about the games that people made during this game jam. He also made a game himself, and so I felt like, okay, I'm going to show it to them and see what they have to say. And they live streamed playing the game and kind of tore it apart in some ways, kind of liked it a lot in some ways. But he basically told us that the growing extra arms mechanic and the cutting the arms mechanic really gave nothing to the game at all. And so it was kind of like the more mechanics we had, the worse it was. The thing that I learned from this is sometimes cutting features can actually make the game better. And so trying to have like a really good like core experience, and like letting people, you know, focus on the thing that's actually fun about the game is the most important part. And having all kinds of extra mechanics and extra features might be fun to make, and it was really hard to let go of them, but it made the game a lot better. And now the game, that's the current game that we're working on. It looks a lot better graphically, and we fixed a lot of the bugs, and that's going to be the next game that we're going to work towards releasing this year. And so that was the most recent lesson that I've learned. So, takeaways. So I gave you all a bunch of lessons. These are things that I've learned. These lessons are my own. So remember that this isn't like advice, like do these things and you'll be successful or anything. It's just, these are just things that I've learned throughout the course of doing all these game jams, and they help me and they inform my future decisions. So actually this was all a hoax. this whole talk, the whole point of it was just a big advertisement for doing a game jam. If you haven't done one before, and upcoming game jams, we have a game jam that we're running ourselves out of Louisville Makes Games. This is Kentucky Fried Pixels. This takes place the weekend of June 22nd through 24th. And the really cool thing is we're looking at trying to have satellite locations. So the main location is going to be in Louisville. You can work remotely. It's just a jam for people in the Kentucky area. We're looking at having a satellite location in Lexington, and we're trying to also have a satellite location here if we can. And so that's a really cool jam. And at the end of the game jam has basically kind of changed. We've pivoted a little bit, and it used to be just like get your game in a bundle and make your first dollar making a game. So you finish a game for the game jam, you put it in this bundle with all the other games, and then we provide it online on itch, and then we split the money into all the teams. We're still going to do that, but the new theme of the game jam is to guide you through the process from idea, coming up with a concept, starting on your game, working on your game, and polishing it, and then working on the marketing and all of the stuff that goes into actually publishing your game and then releasing your game. And so we're going to guide you through like the life cycle of an indie game. And for a lot of people, that's going to be really helpful, because part of what we're going to do is provide packets where we're going to say these are all the requirements that an app store like Google Play or the iOS App Store have. Screenshots and videos and all the requirements, and you have to have all of those requirements to be able to submit your game. And that's going to it's kind of like a little boot camp, so everybody can improve their skills and actually figure out how to release something. Other game jams, there's Ludum Dare 41, which is actually going on right now, and so I don't expect any of you to do this unless you're really ambitious. So that's this weekend. And then the next Ludum Dare 42 is going to be in August. So the world needs the next 20 games that you're going to make. That's it.